Hello, I'm making the most of some beautiful October sunshine to get more clearing done in the garden of summer crops such as these runner beans, and also get some more things planted, including some overwintering brassicas, garlic and broad beans, and also some green manures. Now, green manures normally are sown in the UK between spring and October, September time, but there are still some green manures that it's fine to sow now. And these are really useful for helping to protect the soil over winter, and they increase biodiversity. On top of this soil in your garden, you've got more plants growing, and also beneath the soil with all the different kinds of roots, which are fantastic for the soil life. We often think about biodiversity above the ground, but it's important to remember about the biodiversity below the ground for the nematodes and worms and protozoa and microbes and all the little creatures that are mostly microscopic that live in our ground. This autumn, green manures are especially important for me because usually I add about 1 centimetre, half an inch of compost to my beds this time of year outside, which helps to protect and feed the soil throughout the winter time. But I've got a few more beds still to make here, and I haven't got enough compost to do that, which is absolutely fine. I'm going to use green manures on those beds instead. When sowing green manures, it's very important to choose those that are easy to remove if you're doing no-dig gardening, and frankly there is no point really in growing green manures to protect and enhance your soil and then destroying the ecosystem by digging it over in the spring. I usually choose separately packaged green manures rather than mixes, so that I can avoid any that I don't really want to have in my soil, and the key one I'm looking out for is rye. Now, ryegrass is a fantastic green manure. It's used widely in many different farming and market gardening systems, but it is trickier to get rid of without equipment. You can get rid of it without digging. You can cut it down low and then cover it with tarp or polythene for 3 weeks or so, which hopefully will kill it off. Doesn't always, but that's a bit of a palaver, especially in the spring, on a smaller scale than a market garden or a farm, where in the spring you put some tarp down, every slug in the planet is going to come and move in underneath, and you don't want slugs where you're about to sow and plant your spring crops. The main green manures I'm sowing at this time of year are white mustard, which is, it's an agricultural mustard, forage peas and field beans. Now, these are a cousin of broad beans, and you can use broad beans as well. In fact, that's what I'll be doing here too, because I managed to get some broad beans in the bargain bin in the shops for very little money, and I've only got one small packet of field beans. You can also use up some old packets of seeds if they're really out of date, such as any kind of brassica, which, like I did here, this little bit of the garden. Radishes are another good one, and they'll grow at different depths. You may get a crop, which is excellent news always, and also in the spring, when they go to flower, it's excellent early forage for wild creatures, and we can eat the flowers, and radish seed pods are fantastic to eat too. Forage peas and field beans, of course, will attract the same pests as broad beans and regular peas, so if you have a really big problem with rodents eating your seeds, it is worth growing them in modules first and then planting them out. I am choosing green manures which either are killed by winter time, usually, such as the mustards, or that can easily be cut down and will die back, such as the forage peas and the field beans. Now, with a field bean or forage pea, you can cut it down at root level and then leave the roots in the ground in the rhizosphere, and this will help feed the soil. And then the rest of the plant you can use as extra bulk in the compost heap to make more compost, which is always brilliant, isn't it, in the garden? With field beans or broad beans, if you're using those as a green manure, you can cut them down at any stage. So if you don't want that bed till later in the spring, the plants will produce flowers which are wonderful for bees and other early foraging insects. And if you don't need that bed for even longer, it will produce some beans, and you can eat the pods when they're small, or when they're bigger you can eat the beans inside, and also the bean tops are delicious too. So multi-use green manures. With the mustards, they will hopefully just be killed off by frosts and winter weather, and I either leave them to just rot down into the ground, or if I'm using that bed to sow or plant plants which are susceptible to slugs, then I will just rake up the debris and chuck it in the compost heap. I sow the field beans or green manure broad beans about 6 inches, 15 centimetres apart, dibbing holes in the ground, and I do the rows 30 centimetres, 12 inches apart. You can do them closer together if you want, but I'm also thinking that I may wish to harvest them later on, so I'm giving myself enough space to do that. With the forage peas, I am sowing them in rows, dibbing holes 10 centimetres, 4 inches apart, and into each hole popping 3 peas. And then with those rows, they will be about 15 centimetres, 6 inches apart. Get good ground coverage of peas then. Not going to worry about staking them up. They can just scramble. For small seeds such as radish or mustard, you can sprinkle them on the surface and then just rake it in. You can sow and plant other things within the green manure, such as this bed here, which I sowed mustard in August after harvesting the potatoes. I'm going to be planting garlic amongst this green manure. This is the bed that I grew garlic and broad beans through green manure last year. It was mustard again. Green manures can help reduce weeds in the plot too. Things like annual weeds, not invasive ones such as bindweed or couch. They will grow through green manure. This is Phacelia, which I sowed in August, and it's in a bed of asparagus. Some of it is going to flower, which is fantastic. This will probably be killed off by winter time. Green manures are brilliant for home gardeners and a great part of garden fertility. There are far more that you can sow from spring onwards, and I'll talk about those in another video.